if the picture has to go off so I could hear you better, I will do so. But go on,
No,
go on.
no, what I'm going to do is I'm removing people from the studio, just you and I, so that will help, hopefully, to improve the quality. But we can hear you very well. You can hear me?
If you speak up a little, I could hear you a little louder.
Okay. Okay. Igbo Basic, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly. I think
Okay.
Tony will just adjust his thing and he'll be just fine. But
Yeah.
we hear him clearly.
Tony, we can hear you. So I'll try not to scream or yell so that if you're having difficulties hearing me, but we can hear you. So Tony, let me start by getting from you. What do you think is the general situation of the country now in terms of political situation? What is your take? Let's start from there. Tony, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Just go on. Don't mind the picture yet.
Okay. All right. You can.
Yeah, go on. Repeat your question.
I said, what do you think about the situation in the country, the general situation in the country now, politically? What is your take?
Yes, the matter is straightforward. There was a reason that Ninas came out on the 16th of December in 2020 to tell Nigeria not to proceed to that election. And every day from that date, we did not leave any gap in telling everybody what to expect. We told them that if they proceeded with that election, the winner will find out that there's no Nigeria to govern, whoever be the winner, because the union is disputed. Ninas is acutely aware of the fault lines of the union. We may say, oh, don't go ethnic, or don't go religious, or don't, we pretend we have a settled union. We pretend we have a democracy. We pretend it's just a matter of getting a leadership. If our people understand the meaning of constitution, that is to constitute, the reason things are the way they are now is that we have a foundational problem. We have a dispute around the question of union itself. We have something we must resolve before we can proceed to elections. But those who are looking at other things felt, well, let's just go get one new leader, and then they plunged on towards election. They've had their election, but there's no Nigeria to govern. The courts are now saddled.
Tony,
the
hold
courts
on.
are now saddled.
Yeah. When you say there's no Nigeria to govern, what do you mean? I mean, there is a court case and the president-elect is preparing to be sworn in on the 29th. What is the thing about no Nigeria to govern?
If we remember that Awolowo had cause to describe Nigeria as mere geographical expression, by that he says, he is telling us that the landmass between Sokoto, Maiduguri, Port Harcourt, and Lagos, if we are to make a pencil mark, around the borders with Niger and Cameroon, you get this landmass, the map of Nigeria will emerge. But that is where it ends. The Nigeria that is that landmass made up of various peoples, the Yoruba, that could be a country of its own, the Ijaw that could be a country of its own, the Tiv that could be a country of its own. The political union called Nigeria is what Awolowo was talking about, that we have not come to where we have a political union. We have to build up to where we can say we are in one political union by our own volition, not what the British did or what is now imposed on us by virtue of a constitution. Again, back to constitution. Have we constituted? Because what we have now, upon which we are now building, is a disputed project site. That Nigeria that whoever is going to be sworn in is coming to try to build is a Nigeria that those of us who know what that constitution means and what it's doing to us, that has rendered us slaves in our homeland, are working 24 hours to pull down. So whether it is Peter Obi or Tinubu or Atiku that they eventually come to swear in, we are saying that to the extent of the dispute we have raised about the question of union. Do we have a country we have agreed to be in, or are people imposing themselves on us? That is what is at issue now. So all of the mechanisms and maneuvers they've done to try to pretend that that question has been settled and therefore we're just going to another election is coming face to face to them now. They have had the election, but the people who they are supposed to be governing are all pursuing different things inside that one burning, that one marketplace that is on fire. If we do not stop and go to repair that foundation, I can assure you that the union will collapse on the head of those who are trying to build on this foundation that is so rickety, a foundation of fraud, a foundation of death, a foundation of master and servant. The politicians, whether they are of APC or PDP or Labour Party, to the extent that they subscribe to that constitution, there's no difference between any one of them. Yes, one may be a sinner of a higher magnitude, the other may be a sinner of lesser magnitude because of what we know and what we don't know concerning it. But to the extent that they subscribe to that constitution that impoverish people, that constitution that kill people, because that is why guns are not in the hands of those who have been slaughtered in southern Kaduna. Guns are not in the hands of those who have been slaughtered in Plateau and elsewhere. It is that constitution. The corruption we cry about. 1 week to exit. This government is raising $800 million to go and pay a subsidy. Subsidy, what is the meaning of subsidy? Because you put refineries on the exclusive list. Therefore, there's no petroleum product. You hijack the assets. You give Dangote license, monopoly, to come and process petroleum for me, having seized my crude oil. And you expect that I'll be clapping for you. It is that constitution. Everything that has gone wrong, INEC, the reason obedient movement people, I'm sure they are present in this program. What we told your principal in private, you now have to listen to. There was a reason Peter Obi said that the problem with Nigeria is like a vehicle with a knocked engine. Because we have been discussing this matter with him since 2012, that the Nigeria we are trying to build is like a vehicle with a knocked engine. The constitution is gone. The constitution we made that brought us together has been overthrown. And the one that is imposed is not working. It's never going to work. And those who are suffering under it are not going to endure it beyond this round. Since 1999, everything has been plunging downward and downward and downward. And people are being slaughtered in this number. Poverty, we have become the poverty capital of the world. Our infrastructure has gone into decay. We are now to the depth of the nose. You know, our nose is now going underwater as a country. You know, for the depths that they have been incurred. What are these monies being used for? People gather in Abuja, sharing 600, 700 billion every month. No part of it is meant for the education or healthcare or housing or any kind of welfare for the citizens. 200 million people. The people who are invading, killing people, are running riots all over the place. They tie everything down with constitution. And so that question of whether we have a union upon which we can build a democracy is what has come up now. Everybody is trying to prevail. They've gone to election. It is that centralized control, obedient movement people. It is the centralized control of electionary machinery imposed by that constitution of 1999 that has swallowed your mandate. Why do I say so? In a federation, there should be no agency sitting in Abuja to do voter registration for everybody. In a federation, there should be no agency sitting in Abuja to issue PVC to everybody. In a Nigeria that has been captured by the Fulani, they are in control of all the agencies. Make a map of Nigeria and put the heads of the agencies on that map. You will then immediately see that there is a section of the country that has hijacked the federation that collapsed in 1966. Nigeria collapsed as a federation in 1966. Let us agree that we have a problem. Let us go and solve that problem. They say no, that they were going to impose themselves and shoot anybody who opposes them. They've gone to the election. That centralized control of electioneering machinery in which INEC is in one place doing everything for everybody. So because they are the ones in control of everything, when they come to register, you'll be struggling to register in your own part. They are able to do that registration for people under age, millions of people under age in one section of the country. In the other section, you have to close your business many times to be able to register. When they began to distribute PVC, we saw how they distributed it. You would struggle and struggle. It was an open suppression. You couldn't get your PVC. But you saw people 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, in hundreds of thousands and millions on the other side being given PVC, including foreigners. You saw when immigration said they cut many of them. How did the PVC get to them when you and I couldn't get it? From that, you come to even the election, on the day of the election, the BVAS, that's BVAS, can be programmed to work well in one area and not work well in the other area. Logistics, your voting materials can arrive at 3 p.m. and the other one 7 a.m., same day, for same election. When you put all of it together, you then see that they were working from the answers. They knew where they were going with what they were doing. But the ones who are being killed, the ones whose assets are being seized by that constitution, we were telling them, election is not the solution to this problem. No outcome that can come from this election that will become basis of anybody assuming power in terms of power and authority in the manner of president that will be obeyed countrywide. We either stop now, because Nina told them that we were going to wait for them on the bridge to that 2023. They may not understand it now, but I can assure you that where we are is that there's nothing that court will rule. There's nothing the tribunal or the Supreme Court will rule now that will cure what has gone wrong. What do I mean? You saw what happened on the 25th of February, in which the rules were set aside. The Supreme Court decision in Adeleke, in Osun, goes to the question of if you were mandated as an agency of government to do something, and there's a law under which you have to do it, and that law, in pursuant of that mandate, you then make guidelines like INEC made. Those guidelines become essentially a part of that law. It's no longer available to you to move left or right from it because you are the ones who made the guideline. And so the Supreme Court finds in their delicate case that yes, when there's a dispute between what INEC declared and what the parties are claiming, that the court will fall back on the beavers to settle the matter. In that case, from what happened on the 25th of February, if anybody wants to dispute the question of who got more votes, Peter Obi got more votes than all of them put together in most of the locations. And we told them that if we went to election, that Peter Obi will get more votes, but that Labour Party will lose the election because of that centralized control. But for Peter Obi to have said that constitution is not the problem, by the time he comes through this process, he himself will be the one to announce to the whole world that the constitution of Nigeria is the problem that needs to be solved, not the question of the driver to move us in a vehicle without an engine. That's where we are now. They are stuck because if you say the man you declared winner is now going to be president with the deficiency of 25%, in the Federal Capital Territory, of course, you are now inviting everybody. You are defying the Constitution. You will then be inviting everybody else to defy the Constitution. And if you know what it means to defy the Constitution, all the institutions created by that Constitution are liable to being defied. President, Army, Police, DSS, NNPC. We have no union. If it is the union imposed by the 1999 Constitution that they are planning to coronate somebody to come and be president, they are going to find the owners of the sovereignty that they have hijacked on the streets, challenging them. So the ones who are jumping around, whether the one they declared or the one they say that has mandate or the one that is second position, you have an election in which 3 people are standing to say we all won. And you have a constitution that actually leaves a backdoor room. It leaves a back door for the sitting president to carry on. Let those who are listening go to section 135 of the Constitution and see whether Buhari cannot remain in office from the 29th of May when all of these shenanigans, come to logjam. But it is that logjam that we told them will happen. We also gave them what could be done to avoid the logjam, and when it happens, what can be done to resolve it. That's where we are now. There's no out. If they say we should go and rerun because the election is bad, of course, the winner will still come to swear to defend and uphold that constitution as basis of union. That will not be acceptable to us. If they say we should do a runoff between the first two, first tell me who the first two will be in the face of what we have seen. And even at that, the winner will still come back to swearing to defend and uphold that constitution. If they say, oh, the man who came third is now first, again, he will swear to defend and uphold the constitution that enslaved me. We are not interested in how there are like 2 robbery gangs or 3 robbery gangs fighting over the loot they got from us. So we are going to separate that fight in a manner that returns our sovereignty to us. That's where we are now.
So Tony, thank you so much. Let's try to get just a few basic things because last time I know you were here for a long time and you had the chance to explain some of these things to our viewers. And most of them they've had this and they want to get you to talk about specific things about what happens next. Okay, so that's what and what exactly are the things that are going to be done. I mean, you've been making this case for a long time now. And elections come and go, and someone is going to be sworn in on the 29th. That's what people believe. And that person will manage the country. So what do you think will happen if that were to happen, that Tinubu is sworn in on the 29th? What will happen?
What will happen is that mandate will be anchored on the defiance of the Constitution that we are tolerating just for the sake of peace. Limited recognition of that constitution will then be blown away. Tinubu, more than anybody else, knows the meaning of that because he was in Nadeko.
Yeah,
he knows what the issues are. So if he thinks that the guns that the federal government has will be enough to hold everybody together, beat them up, and drag them along, he's going to learn the hard way that it's not going to be so. That's for Tinubu. The other people can pretend they do not know, but we have engaged them. This process had engaged Atiku. I was part of the team, in fact, leading the discussion 2016 when we sat down with him in Abuja and when we were talking about restructure, and we were showing him, we wanted to know from him what he meant. And we said, by the time we finished, it was clear to us that he was still looking in the direction of National Assembly for what will happen with Constitution. And it became clear to us that he does not understand what needs to change. And so, having engaged all of the candidates, if they say one of them has become president on the basis of that constitution, then we go back to what we wrote that we were going to do in that constitutional force majeure proclamation. We said it there, and people can go to cross-check. We said it in the operative part, the part that begins with the word accordingly, because there are 3 parts in that proclamation. You may say, oh, they've had many elections. You know, they conducted. Let me go back to the beginning of your question so that we can situate the answer properly. Yes, it may seem that we're just shouting for nothing. They're going to do whatever they choose to do. The reason we had to work for 20 years to come to where we now launch out that force majeure to say we will enforce the consensus we have built is that we didn't want Somalia. We are the only peacemakers left in the arena. Everybody else is pointing guns at everybody else. You look at the agitations across the country, whether it's in the Niger Delta, they're talking about this resource control, or the ones who say they want to do a republic, or the ones they say they want a Biafra republic, or the ones who say, even the question of good governance that can come. Everybody is rejecting what is in place. And we say, let us define what we are rejecting, all of us. It turned out that we all agree that we reject the unitary constitution because our country was supposed to be a federation. Federation meaning that our sovereignty will be the basis of the union. And the constitution we have allows us ownership of our assets, control of our assets, contributing to the upkeep of the center in whatever responsibility we delegate to the center. All of that have been upturned. And we say, let us go to a meeting. That was why we convened Pronaco at the time the 1999 handover had taken place, we consulted across, straight from Nadeko, that was talking about the soldiers leaving government house. We then went to the constitution by which we will operate that democracy. The one they imposed in 1979 was now what they carried forward in 1999. We said, no, it won't work. Let's go and work out what will replace it. If we were successful, like we were, in calling a meeting of the owners of Nigeria, 164 ethnic delegations that sat for 2 years, including all of those who were carrying arms against Nigeria at the time. Asadi Dokubo and his Niger Delta Volunteer Force, the Canadians and his OPC, the ones doing Biafra of Masob Wazirike, we managed to get all of them to come to sit down with everybody else, put your guns aside. Let us agree on what we want in place of what we are rejecting, so that it doesn't end up a fight, everybody against everybody on the street. We succeeded in that. We ended in 2006. The only people that didn't come along was the government of the time. Obasanjo went on national TV to say that we were committing treason if we insisted on calling a meeting of the owners of the sovereignty they were confiscating by virtue of that constitution. And so we had to defy him and carry on with what we were doing. We came out with the outcome that now encouraged us to go to court in 2007 to say that this constitution is a fraud against all of us. And when you have plaintiffs like Enohoro and Soyinka and Ojukwu and Sisi Ono and people like that, and the two men they were holding for treason at the time, it fell on me to file that suit. Therefore, we went before the court to say, this constitution, from the contents of it, there's nothing in conjecture. We say, this constitution, from what Absalom Abaka, who imposed it, wrote in decree number 24. He said he set up a committee that went around and came back to him to say that his Supreme Military Council or Armed Forces Ruling Council of the time, and so that they've removed what is bad and added what is good. That is what will become constitution. That was how we came about the 1999 constitution, carrying forward the entirety of the 1979, plus the states they created in between. And so we went to court to say, we have discussed amongst ourselves. All the nationalities were represented. The US sent us up a mission. European Union sent us up a mission. So it wasn't a casual thing. And we came out with a draft. And the only thing you could compare with what we did was the Aburi Accord, in which the military leaders had to go to discuss the union that had collapsed and what to do to, refloat it. We said, okay, beyond those military leaders, let the nationalities, let Yoruba come as Yoruba, Ijo come as Ijo, Ogoni come as Ogoni, Tiv come as Tiv. Fulani came. Buhari was part of the Fulani delegation that came to that discussion. Syed Abubakar, that is now Sultan in Sokoto, was part of that delegation. And everybody was in agreement that we should have this instead of that. We could go back to being a federation. Shortly after that, they abandoned it and began to do Sharia. And let me say it up front. The reason we won't accept any union except we go to agree is that the 12 contiguous states that impose Sharia, they have basically seceded from the union, the secular union that Nigeria was agreed to be. And they are also feudalists. I still have your question in mind. What will you do if they swear in there? I won't tell you we're going to behead anybody. We will continue to do what we are doing now. We are going to ignore them and their election, because if it is that constitution that is the basis of authority and power, they will come face to face with the owners of the sovereignty that they are confiscating and hijacking.
All right, Tony, let me, I know I want to be conscious of the fact that most of our viewers, they've listened to these things you've been saying, and I want actionable steps. So for instance, they want to know, and people sent me messages when I said you were coming on this show. If you have heard from any of the presidential candidates in terms of, the people that didn't win or that were not announced as winners, in terms of working with you to be able to change something, because it appears as if the political class, they are moving on with the plan, which is coming together to support Tinubu, who will be sworn in on the 29th. What are the practical things you are doing? Because things are moving. If the Atiku and Obi campaign, if they lose in the court system, Most of them are already talking about running again, waiting for 2027. Where does that leave you and your organization and your ideas of what should happen?
Well, the matter is straightforward. If a band of armed robbers invades an estate, as long as nobody has come there to dislodge them, they will remain in charge until somebody comes to dislodge them. And so, those who cling on to that constitution that hijacked our sovereignty and our lives, pretending now they've become the owners of that sovereignty, sitting in Abuja and talking down on everybody else. When the British got here in their colonial venture, of course, some people began to tell them, oh no, we won't agree. You saw what happened to the Oba in Benin, of Arame. You saw what happened to King Jaja of Opobo. You saw what happened to Ojuku's grandfather, the father of St. Louis. They hung him in Nkwonewe for the kind of resistance. Gradually, it came to where, the Second World War happened, and more people, had enough exposure and enlightenment to now begin to pursue. That's where, Nohoro and Co, Mokubo Koye, Awolowo joined them. Eventually, the British now had to begin to call conferences that culminated in the Lancaster House conference to work out what will happen. You saw when apartheid came in 1910, the mere suggestion that that apartheid constitution could no longer be basis of union was treason for many years. It took 80 years, and by the time in 1980, 85, going to 1990, it became clear to the Boers that they could not continue in that Union of South Africa on the basis of that apartheid constitution. But that was because there was an Oliver Tambo, the lawyer. There was a Nelson Mandela, the lawyer. There was Governor Mbeki, there was Dr. Katreda, and all kinds of other people, Winnie Mandela, who said, on no account, whatever it will take, they continued to build up and build up until it became such an overwhelming situation that Frederick de Klerk had to make an announcement in 1990 that apartheid constitution could no longer carry the union. And they went into the conference, the meeting they called CODESA, to agree among themselves what they're going to do. That is what Nigeria, where South Africa arrived in 1990, is where Nigeria is now. Somebody must come to his senses somewhere to agree with us that the constitution that makes us slaves in our homeland cannot remain the basis. And if you have this kind of a situation in which we have gone out of our way against all odds, against what Obasanjo did to try to prevent it from being done, against what the successors did to try to impede it, against our own political gamblers, our own political merchants, who, in the face of all of what we are saying, subscribe to that constitution. A line is being drawn. That line has been drawn, but there will be an enforcement around that line that is drawn. Anybody who is prepared to swear to defend and uphold the 1999 constitution is the number one enemy of everybody who is being tormented by that constitution. I repeat, anybody who is prepared to swear to defend and uphold that constitution that make the rest of the people slave is the enemy of the people, and there's no punishment that is adequate, because that constitution is the reason blood is flowing all over the place. I'm sure you remember the UN visitation of a rapporteur in 2019, Agnes Callamard. You remember that it came to the point where the UN dispatched a mission to go to find out why extrajudicial killings were happening in Nigeria on the scale it was happening. Boko Haram was killing, Fulani herdsmen was killing, police was killing, army was killing. You saw when the NSAS eventually happened, the agitations, Biafra, and all of that. People were being killed all over the place. And the UN sent a mission, rapporteur mission led by Agnes Callamard. At the time we had gone to, you are witness more than anybody else. You spoke with me a number of times in New York. At the time we were engaging the US government for what was happening. Our commander-in-chief was the chief host of the terror network that was converging in West African sub-region. He was the spokesman of Boko Haram before he became president. He remained the grand patron of Mieti Allah, that was taking responsibility for the activities of the Fulani herdsmen, categorized as the fourth most deadly terror group, commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Nigeria that's supposed to be defending me against the invaders. And so my president remained with them. There's no one of them that has been apprehended. It's not as if people do not know who they are or where to find them. And I'm supposed to be saluting and obeying in that kind of a situation. It is that constitution that empowered him. That UN mission concluded by saying that Nigeria is the way it is. The blood that is flowing because of the constitution that is like pressure cooker for injustice. Meaning that it is the constitution that is the reason Niger Delta is upside down. And then agitation for resource control, then agitation for Biafra, then agitation for Odua Republic and everything in between. Look at what's going on in the Middle Belt. Look at the killings going on in that place. Just because the constitution says that you cannot touch gun, you cannot touch the governors cannot issue even one rifle because arms and ammunition remain on the exclusive list of that constitution. So anybody who's seeing all of this, that my economic assets are seized, that's what seized. It is that constitution that seized the oil and gas assets, the ports of Lagos, the bitumen of Ondo, the limestone of Benue that had been allotted to Dangote to become Africa's richest man. Even when the port of Lagos had been given to him in part, he's been licensed to do refinery that will process crude for me while I'm debarred. I'm barred by that constitution from even buying crude and processing for myself, which I have the capacity to do. You saw that Biafra ran for 3 years. Petrol was being used in the place. People were processing it. It's not nuclear science. And so all of that are occasioned by that constitution. The corruption we cry about, the constitution creates avenues for massive corruption and protects the beneficiaries of corruption comprehensively. The question of the economic assets that could have been basis of people doing things for themselves. 68 items on that exclusive list. Your security is compromised. Your economic assets are there. You can't even elect who will govern you in a federation. Look at what happened in Imo. What are we expecting from that court in Abuja now? Because everything is controlled in a central form. So those who are hoping that they are building democracy, those who are hoping that P2B will come and all will become well, I am sorry for them, because whether it is ignorance, the Bible already condemned them to death.
All right.
The Bible says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. Those we are telling, those who do not know, and we're telling them that this is the monster that will consume both you and your mandate. What happened to Abiola's mandate? Did he not win election? They consumed this, they swallowed his mandate. He went after the mandate in the belly of the monster. He got into detention. Then he got killed. We're on that same trajectory now. What we need to do in terms of specifics, what we need to do is to accept that we have this problem. Those mandates, both the one of Tinubu and the one of Peter, those mandates will have to be reinvested into solving the problem. If they're not willing to reinvest it, let me also announce to us that the mandate of the one of Peter Obi, that mandate was a hijack. It was the South and Middle Belt that worked together. Anybody can pretend that is their own cup of tea. It was the South and Middle Belt that worked together to produce that outcome. So it was the alliance we built to deliver freedom to our people that was hijacked by the elders in the name of South and Middle Belt Leadership Forum to now go after power using the mandate for freedom that had already been secured, for which reason we launched the force majeure in 2020. And so if they have now gone to secure that electoral mandate for power, and a bigger thief turns up in the arena to hijack it from them, they are like two armed robbery gangs running away with something that belongs to us. We are going to get into that arena of that fight, and we will be after our original objective. No mandate that can become power and authority over the entirety of the territory called Nigeria will come from that constitution going forward, will come from the charade of February 25th in 20 23. No matter how anybody wants to look at it.